August 15th, 1945. The sun hangs low over the harbor of Yokohama, its light fractured into 1,000 golden shards across the calm water of Tokyo Bay. A small American landing craft noses gently against the pier. From its bow steps a tall, sun-browned lieutenant colonel of the United States Army, his boots still caked with the red dust of Okinawa. In his right hand he carries not a weapon, but a dented metal tray covered by a white cloth. The scent that drifts from beneath that cloth, warm, sweet, impossibly rich, butter and vanilla and something baked, cuts through the salt air like a signal flare. Behind the pier, 30 Japanese army nurses stand in perfect formation, their white uniforms patched and faded almost to gray. They have not eaten a full meal in 9 days. Their faces are thin, their eyes enormous with hunger and defeat. They have been told to expect brutality, interrogation, perhaps worse. Instead, the American officer walks directly to them, lifts the cloth, and reveals 24 golden brown apple pies, still steaming from the galley ovens of the USS Missouri anchored offshore. He breaks the first pie with his own hands and offers the largest piece to the senior nurse, a woman of 40, whose fingers tremble as she accepts it. This moment, brief, almost silent, would be remembered by every nurse present as the instant Imperial Japan truly ended. Not with the Emperor's broadcast, not with the surrender ceremony still 2 weeks away, but here, on a weathered pier with the taste of American apple pie. For 4 years, the Japanese military had taught its people that the United States was a nation of decadent materialists, soft, divided, incapable of the spiritual resolve that animated the Yamato spirit. Propaganda posters showed obese American capitalists drowning in rivers of whiskey while their soldiers fled in terror before the bayonets of the Imperial Army. Nurses in field hospitals from Rabaul to Manila had been drilled to believe that capture by Americans meant violation and death. They had been issued cyanide capsules and instructed, if necessary, to use them rather than fall into enemy hands. Yet now, on this August afternoon, the enemy was handing them dessert. The statistical reality of American abundance had already begun to seep through the cracks of the co-prosperity sphere long before the first pie reached Japanese soil. By mid-1945, the United States was producing 296,000 aircraft, 86,000 tanks, and 12 million rifles, while feeding not only its own 12 million servicemen, but millions of liberated civilians across the Pacific. A single heavy bomber group in the Marianas consumed more fresh milk in a month than the entire city of Tokyo had seen in a year. The average GI in the Pacific Theater received 4,700 calories per day. Japanese soldiers on most fronts were reduced to 1,800, often less. On Okinawa, Marines discovered Japanese field hospitals where nurses had survived for weeks on nothing but sweet potato vines and rainwater. These were not abstract numbers to the women on the Yokohama pier. They were the hollow ache beneath their ribs, the way their uniforms now hung like drapes on skeletons. And now, in a gesture no propaganda ministry could have anticipated, American officers were sharing the very symbol of the plenty their nation had been mocked for possessing. The lieutenant colonel was not alone. From the landing craft came more trays, roast beef sliced thick, mashed potatoes swimming in gravy, green beans glistening with butter, loaves of soft white bread still warm from the oven, tins of peaches and heavy syrup, Hershey bars by the score. Each item is placed on a makeshift table fashioned from ammunition crates. The Americans did not eat first. They served the nurses first, then the doctors, then the wounded Japanese soldiers carried on stretchers from the gutted hospital behind the docks. Only when every Japanese had been given a plate did the Americans take their own portions. One nurse, Second Lieutenant Keiko Hashimoto, would later write in a diary discovered decades afterward, "I bit into the pie and began to cry without sound. The crust dissolved on my tongue like snow and the apples were sweet beyond memory." In that moment, I understood that everything we had been told about the enemy was a lie, not because they were cruel and we discovered kindness, but because they possessed so much that sharing cost them nothing. Their wealth was not weakness. It was power of a kind we had never imagined. That understanding spread like a quiet detonation. Over the following weeks, as American occupation forces moved inland, the pattern repeated itself in village after village. GIs handed out K rations to children who had never tasted chocolate. Medics shared sulfa powder and morphine with the same Japanese doctors who months earlier had been ordered to kill them on sight. In Osaka, an American sergeant gave his last pack of Lucky Strikes to a one-legged veteran of Guadalcanal who bowed so deeply his forehead touched the ground. The recurring symbol was food, always food. Not as charity, but as evidence. A single can of Spam became a talisman of the impossible. An industrial nation that could feed armies across 2 oceans while its civilians at home queued for nylon stockings and new automobiles. Every slice of white bread, every cube of sugar, every square of Hershey chocolate carried the same unspoken message. This is what a society looks like when it believes its people deserve abundance. For the nurses on the pier that afternoon, the transformation was immediate and irreversible. They had been prepared to die for an emperor who promised them glory through sacrifice. Instead, they lived because strangers fed them pie. In the months that followed, many of those same nurses would volunteer to work alongside American medical teams, treating both occupiers and occupied in makeshift hospitals. Some would emigrate after the war, carrying with them recipes for apple pie and an unshakable conviction that democracy, for all its chaos, produced a sweeter life than any empire built on hunger. Years later, when historians asked Keiko Hashimoto why Japan had lost the war, she did not speak of atomic bombs or carrier battles. She spoke of that first bite on the Yokohama pier, of butter and cinnamon and the warmth of a hand that did not strike but offered. We were defeated, she said, the moment we tasted what freedom feeds its children. And somewhere, beneath the rising sun now flying alongside the stars and stripes, the scent of apples and sugar still lingers, a quiet reminder that empires fall not only to weapons, but to the unmistakable aroma of a pie shared freely on a summer afternoon when the war at last was over.